Grand rising, everyone. Woo, woo. It is Wednesday in the middle of the week. Welcome to Grand Rising Elizabeth Wealth Building Wednesday show. My name is Lakeisha LeGrand, also known as Madam Finance, because I help everyday people build wealth with confidence. I'm so thankful for all you all who have came to share your day with us today. And I'm just excited. I'm excited about my future. I'm excited about your future. So let's get the ball rolling. People who know that I love to start our show off with a millionaire or billionaire success story. Some of the Elizabeth, you all have heard this story before, but I just really like this because it reminds me of determination. That's my word for the day, determination. So, the millionaire billion business owner William R. Hewlett had what many would characterize as a rough childhood. William was born in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and his father died when he was only 12 years old. William was not a good student in school. He had serious trouble with reading and taking notes because he was dyslexic. Due to his reading troubles, William focused and did well and very well in math and science, developing a curiosity about how things work. He would take things apart and put them back together. William Hewlett, while in school, met David Packard, who became his best friend. Together, they decided to start a business. They put all their money together and came up with only $538 and flipped a coin to decide whose name would come first in their new business. Hewlett won the coin toss, so they named the company Hewlett Packard. Having only $538 starting capital, their business started in the garage. This led them to introducing many new inventions. Most of them were failures, but they were determined not to quit. This determination led to them designing their first successful product, a radio accelerator that they sold for $54.40. William Hewlett, along with his best friend David Packard, worked hard to grow their business to be one of the most successful companies in the world. They are considered the founders of Silicon Valley. After starting out of a garage with $538 investment, today Hewlett Packard has revenue of $138 billion a year. They also currently employ 315,000 people. Yes, through William never giving up on his vision, over 315,000 people have full-time jobs today. William Hewlett is also one of the biggest philanthropists in the world. His foundation that he started with his wife, Miss Flora Hewlett, has given billions of dollars to help the disadvantaged all over the world. So I like Hewlett Packard. Like I have two Hewlett Packard printers sitting right here. And I love the Hewlett Packard ink program that they have because it saves so much money. If y'all not familiar with that. So I
Right.
love the word determination. Galatians 6:9 says, and let us not be weary in well doing. For the due season we shall reap if we don't faint. So like we gotta keep showing up, even when it's hard. We gotta keep showing up, even when it's hard. Another one of my scriptures, Ecclesiastes 9:10. Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might. So let's just give it our all, even on the small task that matters. We have to stay determined. We have to stay in the game because everybody get their time and chance. Okay. So I'm excited about our guest. Ooh, I just heard so many wonderful things about Mr. Buford. So I'm gonna turn it over to you, because all them accolades, I'm just gonna let you go ahead and share uh some information about you, Mr. Buford. Welcome. We all welcome you today.
Well, thank you. Before he starts, I want to say that he is a return guest. He was in our first year. He came and blessed us when At Peace had brought him on, and I've had a few sessions and blessed with conversations with him. So I was just sharing with him that he's always on my mind. And I receive his information via email, and it's just good to see you. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Queen Adunia. I appreciate it. Always great to see you as well. And glad to see you are still here providing a medium for people to get the information, the soul food, the strategy, to be able to come together and commune. You know, there's no I in team, and you don't achieve anything in life by yourself. So the fact that you are providing this type of space for people to come together and acquire what they need and share what they need to build towards a brighter future and living our best lives, it's a tribute to you and the work that you do, and I celebrate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Amazing.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And my background, for those who may not have been introduced to me, my former background was actually that of a former investment advisor. I started out in the financial services industry over 20 years ago. And I graduated from the University of Michigan. And when I did, it's gonna be a dichotomy here. I did not attend U of M thinking I would operate within the financial services and B2B space. I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a community organizer. So my concentration was African American studies, English, and I think I'm probably like 4 or 5 probably credits away from sociology. However, when I was in college, my eldest daughter, Naila, was born, and I started looking at those teacher salaries. And I started looking at my future and what I needed to do to be an effective provider, and I decided to go a different direction. And I ended up working with a gentleman by the name of Malcolm Turner. He was an investment advisor with Ameriprise, went on to become an executive. And he kind of mentored me a little bit because I was able to sit and watch him and see the impact he was making within the community in terms of helping families achieve financial independence and solvency via the investment advising industry. And so when I was ready to quote unquote hit the job market, despite the fact I had interviewed with Urban League, NAACP, every type of communal organization you could think of, the banking industry is actually the industry that courted me the most. They came calling despite my background. And I ended up working within the banking industry for about 3 to 6 months. Didn't last very long. Right away, I learned that entrepreneurship was going to be my path, that corporate America, I don't know, wasn't going to work out. Long story short, in one of the poorest branches in the United States, off of West Grand Boulevard and Woodward, back before the school was there, back before there were any businesses, right? For those of you who are Detroiters, you know what I'm talking about 20 years ago, what that environment looked like. I raised over $1 million in capital in less than a 3-month period of time. And they gave me a Marshall Fields gift card as a result. And the error in judgment that they made is that, see, I was a licensed banker. So that means I had to go about the process of getting my insurance licensing, getting my securities licensing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I knew how much money they were earning, right? I knew how much I should have been compensated for that work that I was doing. Mm-hmm. And I quit. I did something I would not encourage anyone to do. I walked away from a good paying bank job. You know where I'm going with that, right? What do we talk? Go to school, make good grades, go out and get a good job. But we know that's not quite working out, right? Back when I was coming up, get a good paying bank job, get a good IT job. And then the economy turned upside down. People find out the hard way that's not necessarily the case. Then in 2008, people said, go out and get a good job with the federal government and go get a good government job. And in real estate, you'll never lose if you invest in real estate. And we know what happened in 2008, right?
Mhm.
And then recently, people got another wake-up call. Folks said, once again, go get a government job. You're safe. That is the ultimate security. Well, we found out different, right? And so, I'm not sharing anything new or novel. I was just kind of early to the party in my generation, right? While everybody else was seeking jobs, I chose to take a different route. And so I ended up becoming an investment advisor. And my first 2 years were pretty bad because I didn't have a network, right? I didn't graduate with a huge network of individuals who could invest $100,000, $500,000, $1 million. And I grew up on the west side of Detroit, predominantly in Highland Park. And let's just say the only people who were earning money, they weren't earning legally. They couldn't necessarily have been clients of mine, put it that way, right? So the first 2 years were terrible. I'll willingly admit it. My eldest daughter, I'm so glad she was too young to understand. She would love the fact that I was burning candles all the time. She didn't know I was burning candles because electricity was out. Okay. And, but what ends up happening if you stick with something long enough, if you build those skill stacks, those talent stacks, those experience stacks, right? Those wisdom stacks. If you stick with something long enough and you build those stacks, eventually what will end up happening is your money will catch up with your stacks, right? So I was building those stacks. I was coming to work every single day, sitting at the phone, doing what I needed to do to learn the craft. And eventually my money started to catch up with my experience. And I made another shift. I made another change. I was tired of operating within corporate America, where I was oftentimes the only pepper in the room, if you catch my drift, right? And I decided to go a different direction and start moving towards becoming an agency owner. So I ended up partnering with another broker dealer, another insurance company, and I learned how to be an agency owner. And I began acquiring additional licensing. I began learning different ways in which to build and grow a practice. And what I will say before I go any further is I'm still appreciative for that time that I spent in those environments, because I was exposed to things that most people don't get exposed to. I was able to develop a certain type of competency that I think oftentimes people take for granted. A job is not necessarily a bad thing, right? It doesn't have to be a bad thing. Oh, why not learn on somebody else's dime, right? Why not get access to people who have skills, talents, experiences, who are operating on a high level if you can, and be compensated to do it? A job can just be another form of education if you treat it correctly, right? If you realize the opportunity you have there. And so I'm not dismissive of the experience I had in banking. I'm not dismissive of the experience I had while I was an investment advisor working for the first firm, where, quite frankly, I felt kind of alienated sometimes because I learned a lot, right? I was able to become competent. So we fast forward to 2008 and the economy falls off the cliff. If you remember that, I had clients that owned real estate, commercial properties, they owned car dealerships, construction companies, you name it, they all went belly up. I remember I had a client in particular, he was a multimillionaire on paper, but I remember we went out to eat one night and he couldn't afford to buy a glass of beer, right? That's how bad things were. And so eventually those floodwaters made their way to my practice as an investment advisor. My economy, my personal economy got turned upside down. And people stopped coming to the office looking to invest money. That's not what they were interested in, right? People were running from the hills. Nobody wanted to invest in real estate. Nobody wanted to invest in the market. I will give myself a pat on the back. Despite all of that, my clients that I worked with still averaged 8% returns, while people were losing 20 and 30%. I will give myself a pat on the back for that. But even still, people weren't looking to invest anymore. So what they were coming in and asking me for was, how do I do this business plan? I'm going through a divorce. Like, what do I do with my business? What do I do with my assets? I just found out a partner was stealing from me. How do I restructure my business? I'm getting ready to start a business and I've never managed employees before. I've never had to lead teams before. How do I do that, right? And so here's the thing, when you're an investment advisor, and I think even lawyers would say the exact same thing, people think you know how to do everything, right? They think you really are a jack of all trades, and that's not necessarily the truth. Like, I can write a business plan, it's not my specialization, and I don't want to spend the 90 plus man hours to write one. Most people couldn't afford to pay for that type of expertise, right? I understand tax and accounting, but I'm not a tax and accounting professional, right? I've read thousands of documents over my entrepreneurial journey, but I'm not an attorney, right? You need to have an attorney. I'm not an HR specialist. Yeah, I've managed teams. I understand HR on a really high level. I know how to put the right butts in the right seats, but that's still not my specialization. It's not what I do. But nevertheless, those are the questions that were incoming. And what I began to do is surround myself with other professionals, other companies, other affiliates who could actually provide those services so I could stay what I was really good at, which was basically sales management, biz dev, business development growth, right? And I was able to build a successful business consultant and technical assistance company and suite of services amidst that process. And I tell people all the time, look, I'm not a business coach. Okay, I'm not compensated to sit and talk and tell people what to do. I'm an entrepreneur first. I build businesses. But if you are willing to lock arms, if we have similar vision, goals, objectives, we can partner together, and I don't mind teaching you some things, right? And on rare occasion, I may take on somebody who's like, Mr. Buford, I'm going to harass you every single day for the rest of your life until you're willing to consult with me and teach me about what it is I need to do. But first and foremost, I'm an entrepreneur, right? I am fortunate to own a legal shield, or people know the company's PPLSI as well practice. I quietly launched a wholesale real estate company a handful of years ago, had some success with that. Probably was averaging about 5 hours a week, and still turned that initial endeavor into a $20,000 return on my time. So I think, I'm not a multimillionaire in the industry yet, but let's just say I've made some strides since then, so I'm doing okay. I have an online publishing company called the Grow Givers Project, where, as Queen Aduni mentioned, we give the game away for free. So you want to learn how to manage people properly, it's there. You want to know how to lead people, it's there. You want to learn how to put together courses and programs to build your business, the information's there. If you want to know how to acquire capital and secure funding for your business, the information's there. We make it all available to you, right? We have podcasts and interviews with business owners that own billions of dollars in real estate, all the way to the person that's just getting started earning $20,000 a year. It doesn't matter. We share that entrepreneur experience. Because if we don't tell our own stories, we don't control the narrative, people will do it for us. And we might not like what we get, right? And then I still provide some technical assistance consulting to business owners that come into my ecosystem. At the end of the day, what this is all about is empowerment. I believe entrepreneurship is empowerment. I believe it is the most effective way to solve most of the problems that transpire in our community, because the bottom line is, it's tough to live your best life. It's tough to show up as your best self when your stomach is touching your back and you don't know whether our job is going to be there. You don't know how you're going to take care of the family when you're making those kitchen table decisions, right? It's hard to make smart decisions when you're operating in a space of scarcity. I believe entrepreneurship is empowerment as well, because if you are the employer in your community, if you employ the block, you control the block, okay? You control whether or not the grass gets cut, you control whether or not the trash gets picked up, you control whether or not there's a rec center or there's a liquor store at the end of your block. It's the employers, right, that really dictate that. Entrepreneurship, economic empowerment, having control of your resources. Economics is the tail that wags the dog, okay? It's economics, and politics is a dog. Economics determines all of that. And it determines everything that transpires in your community, economics. I had a totally different talk planned for today, but I had an interesting conversation with a group of entrepreneurs yesterday at an event that I put on the first Tuesdays. We do something called Biz Connect Mixer, where people can come in and share information, stories. about their businesses. They can receive business coaching and insight. And we share information about resources we provide to help business owners level up, right? Make better tax, accounting, financial, legal decisions, et cetera, et cetera. And it was interesting how you started, Lakeisha, when you talked about wealth building and self-determination, because that's exactly the conversation we had last night. And at the end of the day, what the conversation basically focused on was power, agency, and control. And the stat that I shared with a group of entrepreneurs that I was conversing with last night was that by most measures, most experts, right, people who actually study economics, right, it said the African American community, our net worth at large will go down to 0 by 2050.
Wow.
Now, here's the thing I need people to understand why I am like unabashedly taking aim at this issue. It is because, remember, I'm a historian, right? I've probably forgotten more African American history than most people will ever know. And what we oftentimes, when you don't know your history, when you don't know the shoulders you stand on, you are bound to repeat your mistakes. You don't make progress, right? And the reason why people need to understand and be very afraid of that is, you know, when we were in forced bondage, do you know our lives mattered more than when we came out of slavery? Did you know our lives were more valuable while we were slaves than when we weren't? Let me elaborate upon this. See, if Lakeisha owned me and Sheila damaged me, shot me, harmed me somehow, Lakeisha would get upset because Sheila just damaged a very, very valuable tool, a very valuable resource, right? Now look, forced bondage, slavery was a terrible, terrible, terrible. It was one of the worst human atrocities in history. So let me be careful about this. Let me not make light of it. But the bottom line is, people who owned other people back then, they weren't so quick to quote unquote destroy the product. But if you study history, after forced bondage, de jure slavery came to an end for the most part in the United States. What went up? Violence. There was more violence committed against African Americans after slavery than before. And what did that violence take the shape of? Lynchings, random killings, codes and laws that just made it okay to slaughter ebony people at large with no consequence. Why is that? Because economically, we weren't of consequence. And if you don't have any control of what happens in your community, if you can't control what happens in your household, if you can't bring economic consequence, study human history. Study what's going on today around the world. Look at the people who have no control over resources. Look at the people who have no control what happens to their families. Look at the people who have no control what happens to what's happening around the world. What happens to those people? Right? And for that reason, our community needs to be very, very, I don't like using the word afraid, but we should have a little bit of fear and anxiety. We should be more interested in that than anything else. Because in 2050, if you can do something to someone and there's no economic consequence, why wouldn't you? I want you to think about that. I want you to think about the fact that when, or hypothetically, let's say a Jewish man were gunned down in the street by a police officer. We all know what the consequence would be, don't we? Because not only would there be a moral consequence, there will be what? An economic consequence. If you did the same thing to an Irish man, what would happen? If you did the same thing to almost any other community, if they were gunned down in the street by somebody that was charged with the responsibility of protecting the community, what would happen? We all know, right? It'd be all over the news. And whoever was responsible for causing the harm would face the lash, economically, socially, and otherwise. What happens today when a young Black boy, man or woman, is wrongly accused or gunned down? What happens? besides some kicking and screaming in the street, what happens 2-3 years from now? What changed in the lives of African American men and women during the Black Lives Movement and when Floyd was strangled and killed? 4 or 5 years later, are we better? Do we have more employment? Are more of us in control of what happens in our households? Are more of us determining who gets employed and who doesn't? Who goes to college and who doesn't? Are we any better? Right? Now, I want you to think about that. Part of the reason why we have some protections is because of the vote, and part of the reason why we have some protections is we can bring a little bit of economic harm. We can boycott, right? We can make a little bit of noise. But what happens in 2050 when it's down to 0? And that's the conversation we had last night. And I want you to utilize that as the context and for the framework that I'm going to share with you, right? What I want to talk about today is how you go from a hustler, a solopreneur, to an employer. Because that's what I've dedicated the next 10 years of my entrepreneurial journey to, right? Our goal intra-organizationally with the individuals whom I work and partner with, and I'm blessed to work with, I see some of them here today. Hi, Ms. Jackie Poe, Ms. Donna Glass. I probably shouldn't have named names because then I'll probably miss out on somebody else, but they know ultimately our goal is to help over 100,000 households over the next 10 years, not just simply start up a side hustle, but become a full-fledged business owner where you employ people, whether it's one person or 200 people, right? But what does that process look like, right? Well, we all know what that process looks like if we've been in business for longer than 2 minutes. You start out as a solopreneur, right? You have a value prop, you have a product, you have a service. It's exciting because you get to go out there and share your passion with the world. You get to go out there and make an impact in the world with your skills and gifts, assuming you've kind of figured that part out, right? But then 2 minutes into it, what happens? It starts getting difficult real quick, right? Because you're wearing all the hats. You're trying to be the CEO, CFO, CMO, CIO, CTO. You're trying to be the tax, HR, tax, accounting, marketing, branding. You can't even keep up with all the acronyms today, right? That's what it is. And that, at the end of the day, unless you were born on third base, which I wasn't, that's where you start, right? And so what does that process look like? How do you become successful as a solopreneur? Well, number one, the habits and your appetites. Your habits and your appetites will determine what happens at that stage of your business more than anything else, right? Because in life, what you learn as an entrepreneur, you don't get in life what you want, you get in life what you are. And what you are your habits and the things that you do. And so as a solopreneur, one of the first things you have to get really, really, really focused on is, number one, what's your value prop? How are you really changing people's lives? People are not interested in what you do, they're interested in the impact, right? The individuals who are here today, you didn't come here for a talk, you came here because you expected some type of impact, right? What's the value prop? What's your competitive moat? What makes you more effective than the next, right? What do I mean by that? I remember when I was attending college, Domino's was the thing. And that was a long time ago, right? Domino's was killing it. They were crushing it. Why did Domino's crush it when I was in college? Because they had this thing where they were the only ones at the time where if you ordered a pizza and you didn't like it, you could send it back and get another one, right? Do you all remember that? When pizza companies started doing that? And they were the only ones. And they took off like hotcakes. That's a competitive moat, right? Let's take Starbucks. People don't go to Starbucks for the coffee. No one's paying $5 and $10 for the coffee. Why do you go to Starbucks? Because eventually when you walk in there, they start learning your name, don't they? They'll start calling you by your name. They put your name on the cup. There's a Starbucks I used to go to where I would walk in and the baristers like knew how I liked my coffee. They liked how I liked dirty chais. I didn't have to tell them to put the shot in the dirty chai. They just did it automatically. right? Customer service was their competitive moat. You don't go to Starbucks, once again, for the coffee. You go there for the treatment. You go there for the ambiance. You go there for the personalization, right? Let's take some of these airlines right now. First class used to be the competitive moat. You got the first class experience. But nowadays, you know, people will pay the extra money to sit in first class once or twice. So what are some of these airlines doing now? Where now they have a service where when you hit the airport, you don't get on the airline, you don't get on the airplane the same way everyone else does. Someone takes your bags, they check your bags in for you, and then they pick you up and they drive you around to the airplane, and you get loaded in first. Your bags are taken care of, any food, beverages, any accommodations you need, all that's taken care of. Yeah. And then when you land, the same thing happens. You don't get off the same way everyone else gets off. There's somebody literally to escort you from the plane to the checkout. They drive you there. They pick up your bags. They make sure your lunch, food, transportation, everything is accommodated, right? There are companies and airlines that are doing this now, right? You see where I'm going with competitive moat? What makes you unique? What makes you different? How can you improve a service and make it more attractive or more convenient or more accessible? And how can you do that better than anyone else, right? It's not enough to wake up and say, I'm the best of all time, it's gonna happen for me today. No, you have to adhere to define that competitive moat. When you're a solopreneur, that's what you're doing, right? You're developing the habits, the KPIs. Now, I'm not a solopreneur anymore, but I still woke up at 7 a.m. this morning and did a presentation and helped one of my business partners earn some money. I know what my KPIs are. I know how many people I need to invite per day in order for someone to be willing to take a look at my business. I know the numbers. I know based on how many presentations I give, I know the percentage of people who enroll in whatever service or product that I'm providing. I also know how many referrals I'm going to get per person I meet. Because the quickest route to a destination is a straight line, right? Why would I pay $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 in marketing when I can simply ask Lakeisha, hey, Lakeisha, did I do a good job? Do you see value in our service and what it is that we do? Great. I'm so glad we're in agreement. Whether Lakeisha acquires a product or service, I'm going to ask Lakeisha, who else do you just want to help? Who do you know that can be benefited from what you learned today? Right? Not everyone's going to buy. So don't worry about whether or not people buy. Don't worry about that. Trust me, not wasting my time. But who do you know that can be benefit and serve? And if they make a buying decision to improve their business or their lives, look, you can be the person and have peace of mind of knowing that you help them out. Who do you know? Right? Who do you know is a business owner? Who do you know that's looking to grow and expand and achieve financial independence? Right? I can ask those referrals. See, the biggest issue that a solopreneur has when you first start out, or those who are thinking about making a transition from employment to entrepreneur is, let's be honest, what are you scared of? You're scared of, how am I going to create income on a consistent basis? Let's be real. That's the biggest fear. It's like, how am I going to create revenues on a consistent basis? I've never done this before. So people ask me all the time, JuJuan, don't you ever think about getting a job? I'm like, no, that's scary. They're like, what do you mean it's scary? I'm like, that's scary, a job? Some random person can just fire me because they mad at me, they're upset with me, or because they want to take a couple more vacations, they want to balance those vacations on my back. Or maybe the business owner makes a dumb decision and now I've lost ability to, that for me is scary. If you know your numbers as a solopreneur, if you know your value prop, if you know your RGAs, it's not scary at all. My income is very predictable because I know what inputs I need to put in to get outputs, right? And when you're a solopreneur, that's what it's ultimately all about. Knowing your values and your principles, knowing your value prop, knowing your core focus, who you want to serve, how you want to serve them, and your competitive advantage. And this piece is really important, who you want to serve. Now, I don't discriminate against anyone, but I know who my buyer avatar is. So let me use an example. Let's say, hypothetically, I own a barber shop. And let's say I want to own a barbershop that caters to people like me. See, I'm not that guy, I'm sorry, is not going to sit in the barbershop for 3 hours kicking it. I'm not about that life. I'm a parent. I manage 3, 4 different businesses. One of the businesses I operate, I'm dealing with anywhere from 100 to 200 to 300 people in any given month. I'm not that guy that has time to blow. So when I walk into a barbershop, I arrive 5 minutes early and I expect my seat to be ready. And when I sit in that seat, I expect the barber not to go out walking up and down the street, talking to people about what they saw on Facebook last night, and for somebody to come in there selling radios and pop pies, distracting the barber. I want to get in and out, right? So if I were going to set up a barbershop with that type of avatar, which is me, how would I structure things in that barbershop, right? Would I allow people to come in willy-nilly, or would it be by appointment only? Would I set up a concierge service where the person comes in, hey, bro, let me take care of your cleaner. Let me take care of your jacket. Let's run that to the cleaners and get it back to you in an hour. You know what? I noticed your car wasn't washed. Let me take that vehicle and take it down the street and get it washed right quick. I noticed you like to wear those kind of shoes. Here, kick back, you take those shoes off. You don't need them right now. Let's get those shoes shine, get you looking good, right? I know who my target market is. I know who my buyer persona is. That doesn't mean that someone walking up and down the street can't come into the barbershop, but I know who I want to serve and why I want to serve them, right? As a solopreneur, when I ask another business owner, who's your target audience, who you want to serve, and they say, everybody, I know you're in trouble. I know you're in trouble because you can't be all things to any and everybody, right? Somebody that's accustomed to coming to the barbershop and getting the $5 haircut and asking the barber, hey, can you give me a deal? They ain't gonna make it in my, they're not gonna get along in my barbershop, right? They're not gonna be coming too frequently after that, right? Because I'm gonna tell the person that sits in the chair, we need $500 per month. And for $500 a month, this is what we're gonna give you. We're gonna make it exclusive, right? You see where I'm going with this? Why knowing who your target market is? Well, I remember there was a young lady I was talking to and helping out. She wanted to start a cannabis company. And I asked her, who's her target market? She said, anybody who wants to buy cannabis. I said, why'd you get the cannabis company started? And she couldn't tell me for the first 5 minutes, but if any of you know me, I'm very persistent. I'll keep asking the same question until I get the answer. And so eventually she told me, well, my mother, I take care of her. And my mother had been basically stuck in a lazy boy chair for the last 3-4 years because she had gout, she had aches and pains in her bodies and her bones, suffering from illnesses. It just got to the point where it was so painful, she wouldn't even get in her bed anymore. And she wouldn't even bathe herself. I had to help bathe her. And it was just such a challenge. It was such an issue. I just felt so bad watching my mother deteriorate like that, just sitting in front of a television, motionless, just moaning all day long. And she said one day she went out to a party and she came home. And she came home and mistakenly fell asleep in a chair across from her mother and left us leftover edibles on the table. She said the following morning when she woke up, her mother wasn't sitting in the chair. Her mother was laying in the bed. And she was in shock. She was like, what in the world? And she said, what happened? So it hadn't happened in years. Her mother literally was in that chair all day, every day. And then later on the day, she put 2 and 2 together. She said, I put some edibles, like some cookies or something on this table. They're gone. She said, I think my mother may have eaten those edibles. So a week later, what does she do? She comes home, she leaves some edibles, not on the table in the living room, but in the kitchen, where a mother would actually have to get up to get them. And she went in her room and went to sleep. And she came back to the living room. This time, her mother not only was not in the chair, but her mother actually bathed herself. And then she freaked out because she wasn't even in the apartment complex. Her mother was outside sitting on the bench at a park, playing with the kids, laughing and smiling. Now, she wasn't walking around, but she was sitting on the bench outside playing and laughing and talking to the parents and everything. So she did it again. This time when she woke up, it was on a Saturday, and Saturday mornings and when she goes grocery shopping. And she noticed when she woke up, her mother had already bathed herself, had already clothed herself, put on some of her best clothes, and she asked her, "Can I go to the grocery store with you?" And she was scared to take her to a grocery store because her mother had him in walking and doing exercise and stuff, right? For a long time. She didn't know how she was going to take it. And then she went to the grocery store with her anyway, just to see what would happen. And no, her mother couldn't do the entire 30-minute trip. She had to sit down a couple times. But she was walking through the aisles, talking to people, conversing about the food and what was organic and what wasn't, and what was healthy for you and what wasn't, and this, that, and the other. And then her mother's friends, who were also in similar conditions, started asking her mother, "What in the world did you do over the last 2 months? Like, what's going on? Like, what did you find?" And her mother was telling her about the edibles her daughter had given her. And then she looked up, and all of a sudden she had 20 and 30 and 40, 70, 80-year-olds all in the neighborhood coming to her for these edibles. And so when she shared that story with me, I said, "You don't serve everybody. You serve your mother. That's your buyer persona." Because the one thing I know about your mother is that she's not going to go to a dispensary because they feel, women that age and that generation feel some kind of way. Plus they feel like it's not safe. I said, stop trying to sell edibles to all these young folks and trying to create t-shirts and be hip and you 30 years older than them. I said, I want you to start up a transportation company where you actually transport older women to these dispensaries, or you go to dispensaries and you bring it to them. And then you have your edibles on the side. Now, this wasn't designed to promote edibles, but this was designed to give you an idea of why knowing who your core focus is and who you want to serve and your target market is so absolutely important. Before I met her, she was struggling. She couldn't even get a storefront. Now she's crushing it. She has a transportation. She's not an edibles company. She's a logistics company. She's a transportation company, right? Done upgrade her life. New car, new house, new neighborhood, new everything. She eating different, living different, everything different, right? And so that's what it looks like when you're a solopreneur in the beginning. But eventually, there's only 24 hours in a day, and you can only do so much by yourself. Can we be in agreement with that? Talent and hard work wins games. Intellect wins games, but teams win championships. Because when you're a solopreneur, you're just one car accident away. You're just one sickness away. You're just one family member getting sick, and you have to put your business down to go take care of them. Something happens to your child, you got to put it down and go take care of. Something happens to your spouse, you got to put it down, you got to take care of. Right? That's what it is to be a solopreneur. If you use your hands, you slam your hand on the car door by mistake, it's a wrap. You're in trouble. Can we be in agreement with that? So now you got to make the transition from a team of me to a team of we. Right? Which means when you're a solopreneur, you need to be journaling. You need to be documenting your process, your journey. Because I hear people say it's hard to find good people to work. These people lazy. These kids don't want to do this. They don't want to do that. They're not coachable. They don't listen. And 9 times out of 10, I ask the entrepreneur, did you give them a track to run on? And 9 times out of 10, they didn't give them a track to run on. When you join one of my teams and one of my organizations, there's a track to run on. We teach you from the time you make eye contact with someone what you're supposed to say. We teach you how to invite that person to learn how to approach someone and give them an enticement to be willing to look at your product or service. Then we teach you how to present to them. Then whether they say yes or no, we teach you how to get referrals, whether they say yes or no. That way you're never running out of people to talk to, right? You don't have to spend a bunch of money on marketing hoping someone will give you a phone call, right? We walk you through that process from A through Z. It's recorded in video and it's recorded written. So for the solopreneurs, are you recording your journey like that? Because when it's time for you to make the transition, from solopreneur to business owner, if you don't have a track to run on, man, you have a tough road to go, right? Yeah, it's hard to find good people when they don't have a track to run on. You hire someone, you got a helicopter them like a helicopter mom. It's taking money and time away from you, and then they become an undue expense, right? Also, there's an acronym that I encourage you to use when you are switching from solopreneur to business owner and employer. And that acronym is something that I refer to as GAS. You got to ask yourself, do they get it? Do they get it? Do they get the mission? Do they get the vision? Do they get your core values? Do they get your core principles? Do they get your core focus? Do they want to serve your core market or your buyer personality, right? Do they get it? Because if they don't get it, they're mercenaries. They're just showing up for a check. If they're not passionate about the mission, they're not passionate about the work, they're not passionate about helping the people that you help, they're mercenaries. And what do mercenaries do? We know what they do. And I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to define it, but you know where I'm getting at. You want to make sure that they're willing to be accountable. Because people can respect what you do. They can get it, but they also have to be willing to be accountable. Not everybody wants to be accountable. Are they willing to show up on time or early? Are they willing to stay late? If they don't know how to do something, are they willing to learn it? Are they going to come to you and put that monkey on your back? Are they willing to be accountable? Are they willing to be coachable? If you ask them to jump, they don't ask why I got to jump. They say how high? Because I want to be successful here. I believe in the mission, right? You got to find people who are willing to be accountable to the mission, who are willing to do the things they need to do to have success. Now, look, no one will ever be as accountable to you. It's your baby. It's your business. So if you're accountable to the tune of 100%, they're going to be accountable to 80%, right? You have to expect that, right? But don't expect that you're only exhibiting 50% accountability if it happens in your business and think someone's going to be, no, they're going to be 20. They're going to be a reflection of what you are. So it cuts both ways. You got to create accountability in your business. The last thing is they have to have the skills to pay the bills. If they don't, people be hiring their family members and friends. Look, there's nothing wrong with hiring your family members and friends. The issue is they have to have the skills. It becomes problematic when you become nepotistic. You're on board and family members and friends because they family members and friends and not because they actually have the skills to pay the bills. I know people who hire family members and friends. Other communities put their family members and friends all the time. They're doing pretty well. Not in our community, not as often as it should, right? Because we become nepotistic, right? Well, I don't like this person. I don't like the way they looked at me. I don't like the way they dress. I don't like the way they move. They dated my boyfriend 15 years ago. You need to learn to like talents and skills. That's what you need to learn to like. Develop an appetite for that, right? Because that's what's required for you to go from a team of me to a team of we, right? But here's the other thing. When you grow from a team of me to a team of we, you got to start investing in systems, sales systems, business development systems. You got to start hiring talent. You got to hire an HR person. Some of us want to be cheap. You get what you pay for in business. You may need to hire a fractional COO because you're not going to be able to do it all. Once you start bringing on talent, you got to actually bring on talent to help you manage the talent. You're going to need a sales management person. Look, I'm not touching digital marketing because it's not what I do. I'm going to onboard someone. Why am I going to spend the next 2-3 years trying to be a specialist at marketing when I can pay someone that can increase my bottom line by 100K and I can pay them 30K? I'll pay 30K to earn 100K every day of the week. That's called winning. But some of you looking for shortcuts and everything. I'll pay a COO 100K if they turn my business and increase it by 300K. You smell what I'm cooking here? Right? Now, some of those systems can be AI. Okay. But you have to start investing in systems because if you are the bottleneck where every time something needs to happen in the business, somebody has to come to you, you will never get free. You could be earning $1 million a year. You'll feel like someone earning $30,000 a year because you don't have time to breathe. So you have to be willing to delegate. You have to be willing to pass that track that you've written for success on to other people and give them the space to do their job. Something else that I see that happens oftentimes with entrepreneurs is we want to, somebody more talented and more intelligent than us shows up in our business. And what do? We've all seen it. You've probably experienced it. What do people do? They try to push you down. But you do understand if you're pushing down on someone, that means you got to get down with them, which means you can't go up. Right? So that's why you need to have independent contractor agreements. That's why you need to have non-solicitation agreements. That's why you need to have NDA agreements. That's why you need to have profit sharing and affiliate agreements. So that talented person, you can let them do their thing, but you still maintain ownership. You give them the space to exhibit and share their talents and skills. You want people who are more talented than you. You want people who are more skilled than you. You want people who are smarter than you. That's what you want. You want to empower them, give them the space to crush it. But make sure you have golden handcuffs, right? You need that. Then the next level after that
JuJuan. Yeah, we're almost at we got 3 more minutes. And I see that Lakeisha has a question. And you're giving us so much information, trying to write and keep up with everything. We'll have to have you back again. But Lakeisha, you wanna you got so much information for us.
I know, like it was so powerful. You know
I know it was hard to stop.
I like to recap a few things, but it was we only had time for me to recap.
Let me just share this one thing.
Please go ahead.
Let me share this one thing. Because I want to end where I began.
Okay.
The reason why this process is so important is because if we don't control the narrative in our resources, people will do it for us. The reason why this platform is so important is because other people have platforms where they're telling our stories. They're finding people who aren't even in our community telling our stories. And we know what happens when people tell our stories, right? We get distorted. We start looking ugly, right? And then they import our stories to the world, and then the world has a perspective about who and what we are. It's not enough to start up to work for the transportation. You want to transportation, you want to own it. It's not enough to start up the media company. You want to own the media company. It's not enough to work for the restaurant or manage the restaurant. Eventually, you want to own the restaurant and you want to partner with other restaurant owners, right? Because we talk about power and financial independence and self-determination, but none of that stuff happens if you don't do those things. All right, I'm done.
Wow. That was so good. so good. Okay, so that was really some good information. I really would love to have you back, ASAP. You used a lot of, acronyms. Just in case some people didn't know, he used KPI a lot, which is key performance indicator.
Mm-hmm.
He used the word moat, and that word is used a lot in the, in the investment world, a lot, making your business stand out so that's, not easily can be disruptive, what keeps you in front of the game. I mean, this was so really empowering. Now, when you talked about, well, it's 10 o'clock, so I won't go into that about leadership and being able to, when you have your family, your friends, and people to help you with your business and they're not performing as they should. I really had wanted to hit on like what to do, like what's the process? Because a lot of times as a leader, you don't want to hurt their feelings.
So let me give you the short version. This is the toughest thing for entrepreneurs to accept. The people who start with you may not be there at the finish line. Sometimes you got to let people go. Because as you climb, the air gets thinner. The expectations become more. There's more of a magnifying glass in your life. If you got bad habits, them bad habits will take you down. Haven't we seen this in the media recently? I'm not going to say any names. Right? What ends up happening is the crew that came with you, that's the crew that you were comfortable with because you were you at that time. But as you earn more, as you take on more responsibility, you become a different person. And some of the people that you started with, they're not willing to accept that additional responsibility. They're not willing to accept that additional stress. They're not willing to accept that additional accountability. And some of us try to hang on to them, but they're not ready. They're not on the level. They're not trying to go there. It doesn't mean they're no longer your friends. It doesn't mean you diss them, but sometimes you got to begin to distance yourself from people. Because when you earn $30,000 a year, your conversation changes when you earn 100K. When you start earning 250K, your conversation changes than when you are earning 100K. If you're blessed and fortunate to be beyond 250, you're gonna be having totally different conversations. You're gonna be thinking about totally different things. And if you're evolving, you're gonna eat differently. There are places I used to go to 5, 6 years ago that I won't even show up at anymore. It's not because I think I'm better than them. It's because I know how valuable I am. And if the wrong thing happens, my children won't have a dad. As I became more valuable, my priorities changed. My appetites changed for people, things, places, and locations. And so 9 times out of 10, what my experience has been, if you have a hard time building with people, it's because you have not accepted the fact that you got to let some of those people go. And if you pay attention to people who don't let those people go, look, water finds its level. So that is part of the leadership conversation that we don't have enough of. Like, I'm not going to diss somebody that's not on level, but I may find something else for them to do. I might introduce them to another situation. We still talk, we still have the relationship and interaction, but as I level up, it's not lonely at the top. You got to make new friends. And that's a conversation we don't have enough. So hopefully that kind of sort of answers what you were getting at.
Yes, thank you so much. Well, it is 10:03. I just want to say thank you so much, Mr. Buford. This was, more than what I expected. This was awesome and amazing. Grand Rising Elizabeth, we love you. We honor you. We just so thankful, that you shared that information with us. Do you have your information? You have any information that you can share with us so people can contact you if they need to contact you?
There are 2 places you can go where you can get all my information.
Okay.
LinkedIn, all my information is there. Also, if you Google the Grow Givers Project, all my information is there. You can learn about companies, organizations, business endeavors I'm involved in, learn about some of the people that I've worked with, circles. You'll get everything there.
Is that grow or go?
The Grow Givers Project.
Grow. Okay.
So GROW and then Givers and then Project. And I apologize. I thought, number one, I did not know this was a project between you and Queen Aduni. So I didn't know what the time limit was. I didn't know what I was getting into. Whenever Mr. Hoover gives me a call, I have so much respect and regard for this brother. I'm just going to show up.
Yes, he's amazing.
So when he, I'm thinking it was going to be like 15 men in this room. And I look up and I'm surrounded by a bunch of women. I'm like, oh, this is going to be different.
And you've been here before.
Yeah. So I was like, I apologize if I went off the rails a little bit. I didn't quite know what the parameters were, but I'm glad I was able to be with you today. And I hope this information served you and was of some benefit, and more than willing to continue to have the conversation. I can go on for another hour if I really wanted to do a deep dive. But, I tried to just hit the fine points today.
Well, you did a fantastic job with that. I want to end like we always do is Let's hug ourselves, okay? Because sometimes we forget, we love on everybody else and we forget to love on ourselves. So let's love on ourselves. I love to kiss myself because I love me some me. Let's hug the world because the world needs a hug too. And let's sprinkle love and light to those that are in authority. You may be surprised with all this love and light, how it may change some things. So thank you again, Mr. Buford. It was amazing. I'm so excited that we had you sharing your information with us today. And we hope to meet again really, really soon. Y'all have a wonderful and fantastic day on purpose.
Peace out.
Peace.